Welcome to Beyond Church Walls. I am your host, Brad Crow. Around here, we discuss various topics from a biblical perspective and the perspective of Christ followers. Thank you for joining today, and I hope you enjoy the podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are stepping into one of the things I had envisioned for this podcast from the beginning, and that is having conversations that truly go beyond church walls. So every week I try to help people develop a genuine faith that is deeply grounded in God's word, but I also wanted to share real stories from people who are living out faith in everyday life. And today we're doing just that. I'm joined by a special guest, Bryston Bay. I first met Bryston when I started attending Greenwood First Assembly of God, and for about the last year and a half, I've had the honor of being his youth pastor. Bryston graduated high school in May, and then a few weeks later, left on a mission trip to Guatemala. I asked him to come on the podcast today to talk about that experience. So with that, Bryston, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we talk about Guatemala and your mission trip, take us back to the beginning. How does this all come about? Like, how does a guy go from graduating high school and then just a few weeks later getting on a plane headed to Guatemala?
Yeah, I got a great opportunity. This lady that we've known for a while, Mindy James, she goes almost every year, and my cousin was going to church with her last year, and her and my sister went on this mission trip, and they came back saying how great it was. And I was busy a lot last year with band, and so this year after I graduated, I had no commitments, so I was like, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna do this.
Okay, nice. Had you ever been outside of the U.S. before?
No, this is actually my first time.
First time. Okay, and but your sister had went before.
Yes.
Okay. So what made you say yes to the opportunity? Just, I'm guessing, the experience that your sister had, and she's coming back telling stories, and you're just kind of like, man, I got to experience this for myself.
The stories were great, and just mission trip always sounded amazing. It's a wonderful experience. It's just going to different countries, seeing different cultures. It's hard to say no to.
Oh, sure. So when you decided you were going, I'm sure you had a lot of expectations as far as like what it was going to be like, what the experience would be. What were you excited about, and was there something that you were nervous about?
Yeah, man, I was really excited about, just going and see the people, seeing what their faith was like and everything. But on the flip side, I knew we were going to go into hard situations. I was going to see some hard stuff I've never seen before. So I was nervous to go into like the, hard parts of the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. What were your first impressions of Guatemala?
We got on the plane, and when you first go out there, there's crowds of families. I mean, crowds of families coming, greeting their family and everything. Vendors already right outside the airport with little stands getting you stuff. And you get out and you see this like underway, very dirty and everything. But you go out into the city and it's just colorful. It's very busy. Roads are very busy. And so that was my first impressions of Guatemala City. But then we start driving the next day, and we go through the countryside, very beautiful. And we get to Monjas, where we were staying, and it's very run down, but the buildings are so colorful, so aesthetic. They're run down, but it still has a sense of beauty to it. And we get to the orphanage that we were staying on, and you just see the kids playing and everything. And so that was what stood out to me the most, was not really the rundown, but the life that it all had to it.
Yeah. Walk us through what ministry looked like while you were there. Was there like a specific project that you all were going to do, or what were the plans once you all got there?
So we did a lot of things while we were there. One of the projects that we did was Village of Hope. That was a part of the project. They're working with widows and everything to get, a nice place for them to live where they can't really get anywhere in Monjas. But we, did gardening in there. We pulled weeds, we planted trees and all of that. But our main thing was VBS, and we went around to the dump. We went to the orphanage. We went to a deaf school, and we were just teaching about God. We did stories. We did crafts with them and everything, and just had a good time with them.
Yeah, you talk about going to the dump. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, a bunch of families live out there. So it is where the trash goes, but so many families, they can't afford anything, and that's all they can do is live out in the dump. In the past, it was really run down. It was really bad, and it's still not good. But since I've gone, they've really built it up where the families are at least in a livable area where they don't have to be inside of the dump. They live right outside it. And they have a pavilion that we went on where we did VBS and played with the kids and did all that.
Yeah, so I talked to someone previously that went on a mission trip, and they talked about something kind of similar where a lot of the people would live in the dump and they would just, scavenge through trying to, anything that they could just to survive. They're going through the stuff, anything to survive. So I thought maybe that was like a similar thing. You talk about VBS. I talked to you before you left, and I don't know, did you have an opportunity? Did you take your acoustic guitar with you?
I did take my guitar, but I did not play for VBS. I played around the orphanage where we were at, and I went to the retirement home and I played it there.
Were they able to like sing along to the songs that you were singing or anything like that?
No, they just really liked just listening to the music. They didn't care that they didn't know the lyrics. They just liked the music.
Sure. One of the biggest things that has always kind of fascinated me about mission trips is seeing how believers worship and do church in a completely different culture. Was there something that stood out to you about the way they worshiped or lived out their faith?
We didn't do music. We didn't do any of that. We just did a service for the kids. But, these people, they live in very, very bad conditions. They want us to pray with them. They wanted, to get healing, financial prosperity, all of that. And another thing that really took me was that there was, the project we were on, they didn't have a bunch of stuff. They were self-sustaining, which was cool. Everything they had was homegrown. They didn't really buy anything. Everything was grown, like the animals, the vegetables, everything that they had. But they went out in the community and they would help the people in the community too, which was nice. And so you would have people who don't really have a lot would still help their neighbors, everything like that.
Sure. Was there anything on this trip that kind of pushed you outside of your comfort zone a little bit or challenged you maybe?
Yeah, I would say the whole trip was pushing me out of my comfort zone, to be honest. If you know me, I'm not much an outgoing person and everything, but just seeing those kids and everything, we would do plays and I would be Peter, and everything, and I would just try and make them laugh, go in my comfort zone, do stuff I wouldn't normally do, be a little silly.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And funny enough, we're in VBS this week at our local church, huh?
Yes.
Little different experience for you?
Yeah, it is different.
So you're saying there weren't any young people there yelling because they didn't get good enough points?
Oh, no.
Or lying that they didn't get out by a dodgeball?
Well, when we played dodgeball, that could have happened, but
How many days were you there?
we were there for a week.
1 week. All right. Was it hard to come home? Was it hard to leave any part of it or?
Yeah, so there were some kids that we got close to that made it hard to leave. And it's just everything, all the food there was really good too. It was hard to get away from that. But, it wasn't bad coming home. I did miss my bed, did miss that. But there was a lot of stuff in Guatemala that, it did make it hard.
Yeah. What was, so I just have to know, what was it like when you told your mom that you and your sister both were leaving the country to go on a mission trip? How did she take it?
She took it pretty well. She did. Yeah, there's probably, she's like, oh no, both of them are going now. But I think she's happy that we are, pursuing God and going out and sharing his word.
Sure. Yeah, I heard a preacher that one time he was talking about his daughter had gotten married and they'd been married for, her and her husband had been married for a couple of years, and they were being called to, I think it was somewhere in Africa, and the place they were being called was kind of a little rough. And somebody asked him, are you not nervous about your daughter going to this remote place in Africa? And he said, I would be more nervous if she heard the call from God and didn't pursue it than if she were to go to this place. And I just thought, man, that's really powerful.
It is.
Because you think about something like that, and like I have 2 daughters, and so I could just imagine sending them to some like super remote place that, maybe it's not the most law-abiding citizens in the world, and you're going to go and try to spread the gospel message. Man, I would be a nervous wreck. But it is true, if like you feel like you're led by God to go do something like that, then, how can you say no to it? So I guess my next question is, do you have plans to do it again?
Oh yeah, I already told them I'm going again next year.
Going again? How many of
mm,
you all went?
There was probably around 8 of us. Well, there was 8 of us total. There was 4 or 5 of us from Arkansas, and there was 4 from Kentucky that went with
Okay.
us.
Nice. And do you think, so as far as like next year, will it be VBS again, or could it just be a totally different project, or?
VBS is something that we're really passionate about, that we really want to keep going. But as
Sure.
far as like the gardening project, it's a different project like that every time that we go.
Oh, okay. Nice, nice. The name of this podcast is Beyond Church Walls, and the idea for the channel really came from a belief that following Jesus is more than what happens inside of a church building. After this experience, has your view of ministry or how you feel God wants to use you changed at all?
Yes, definitely. I've always, it's easy to get in that rhythm, like everything is, happens in the church, pastoring, evangelism, stuff like that. But just going out in the community, there's a lot of homeless in Guatemala, but man, we have a ton in America too. It's very easy to get caught up in a different country just because it's far off. It's more glamorous to think about going out there. But in reality, we're also struggling. We also have people that need to see God.
Yeah, for sure. I remember one time getting convicted about, this is going to sound weird, but I got convicted for inviting people to church. And I know that sounds really weird, but let me explain. One of the things that was like my out. Okay. So people would be like, I really need to get right with God. And I would be like, well, man, you really need to get inside of a church. And I would be like, invite them to my church or invite them to a church. And so maybe they were struggling, maybe anything. And I would always like invite them to a church. And that was my out. And one time God really challenged me and was like, that's your out. You're using that when you should be praying with them. You should be ministering to them. You should be reaching out to them. I didn't have that urgency. It was like more of a just taking it out, like inviting them to a church building. And sometimes they would come to a church building. So sometimes we would invite them and they would come in, and that was all good. But I was like relying on a pastor for them to come into a church house, hear a pastor's sermon, and for him to preach a sermon for conviction to fall and for them to come forward. They were obviously sharing their story with me for a reason.
Mhm.
It was just that I was too immature in those moments to say, hey, would you like to enter into a relationship with Jesus Christ right now? And so I do think, as far as like talking about your mission trip and things like that and relating it back, there are a lot of needs just even in our communities. And it is really for us to kind of go out and try to make a difference. Well, Bryston, I do appreciate you coming on the podcast. And so you came back on a Saturday, and then Monday we left for church camp. And so you
Yes.
had to have been, by the time all that was over, you had to be pretty exhausted.
Yeah, I slept for a little while when we got back from church camp.
I bet you did. Yeah. So next year you've already committed to going as a chaperone, and I'm holding you
Yes.
to it. I'm putting it on this podcast so that it's
Yep.
verbalized. So it's pretty much like a contract now.
Yeah, can't back out now.
Can't back out now. So we do look forward to it. And you are leaving for college in just, what, a couple weeks?
Couple of weeks.
Couple weeks. And so we will continue to pray for you as you head off into that. And I do appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking about your mission trip. And so I do know I said the last question was the final question, but I do have one more for you. If there's anybody listening that is thinking about going on a mission trip, what would you say to them, Bryston?
If I have one advice, it would be get connected wherever you go. You could try and make connections wherever you go and go out of your comfort zone. Be more out there than you usually would, and the people would appreciate it greatly if you would do that.
Sure. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on to the podcast. And maybe about this time next year, we'll be reaching out to you again, and you can talk about your second trip to Guatemala and let us know how it differed than your first trip.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bryston.
Thank you.